This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, the strange memory you have trouble doubting. Today we're going to be taking a look at Have You Seen This Man? I have not read the story, we're going to get right into it. So from the start we're given a picture. It is this picture. This is a picture of a man. We are being asked if we have seen him. Okay. I'm not a dog person. Thank you for telling me that. This hasn't always been the case, though. As a matter of fact, I used to love them. I grew up telling everyone that I would be a veterinarian one day. Had that been the case, I'd like to think I wouldn't have been in the position I'm in now. I'm a nervous wreck. As long as I can remember, I've suffered from constant paranoia. If you ask my parents, they'd tell you an entirely different story. According to them, I was calm, cool, and collected as a child. They say it wasn't until I was around 12 when the way I carried myself drastically changed. I don't remember much from back then. However, there was a particular scene from my childhood that I'll never be able to push out of my mind. Something, or rather someone, that has shadowed me for the rest of my life. So I'm assuming that this person that has shadowed them for the rest of their life is the person in this picture, this drawing. I feel the writing for this is trying to be naturalistic as what I would expect out of a creepypasta, but there's something a little stilted about it. I don't know that this is the way that a person would structure a story. It feels a little weird. The detail that they weren't always opposed to the dogs, that's nice. The idea that they wanted to be a veterinarian, that is a common statement that children make. They always want to be veterinarians, and they don't realize that involves a lot of dog and cat urine and piss and shit and everything. But I don't know that parents would describe their child as calm, cool, and collected, even if their child is calm, cool, and collected. That's sort of a weird way to describe a child. But now this story is going back in time because it's telling us the date, January 1st, 1994, as a heading. So I guess it's kind of like a little chapter thing. Remember how I said I wasn't a dog person? Yeah, it was like 2 paragraphs ago. Well, there's a reason for that. As I said, I told my parents that I wanted to be a veterinarian. They supported me. They wanted me to be successful. I take for granted how much they cared for me. They bought me books on animal anatomy. They took me to the zoo, 2 zoos. They bought me various VHS documentaries on animals. They tried their best to raise me into the adult that I wanted to be, the adult that my parents could be proud of. Alright, we're getting some good details here that this is a very mature child, very driven child, kind of repeating ourselves in this paragraph a little bit, however, but let's continue. My birthday was in November. I was turning 12. My previous attempts at asking my parents for a pet had always ended in an uneventful manner. They would always say I wasn't old enough, that I wasn't prepared for the responsibility of looking after a living, breathing animal. I was set to prove them wrong. This year, I was fucking 12. I had been reading up on all of those animal books, and this year, I knew I was ready. Once again, I told my parents that I wanted an animal this year. An animal? That's kind of a weird way to phrase that. You don't want a dog or a cat? Their reaction was different this time. My father gave me a single maybe. Okay, so this paragraph has been a lot more natural, feeling a lot less stilted than the previous ones. Now we're kind of getting this character's narrative. We're getting into their mindset of like, I'm mature, I'm a 12-year-old. That's very believable. The formatting for this is still a little strange to me that it says January 1994 instead of just saying that in the paragraph it's a header. That's a little weird, but whatever. Let's continue. And with that, I knew what I'd be getting for my birthday present this year. It was no surprise that when I woke up the day of my birthday to a small puppy licking my face, I was thrilled. There my parents were standing at my bedroom door smiling warmly. They wished me a happy birthday and gave me a speech about how I needed to treat the dog the way I would any other living being. They provided me with dog food, bowls, and a leash. In that moment, I was the happiest I'd ever been in my life. That dog was my best friend. Oh, this story better not hurt a dog. That is sacred, that is obscene, you do not hurt a dog. The time I spent with the dog was great. I was an only child, homeschooled. That's okay. Things are coming into focus for old Dead Pallet here. Alright. I was never really able to have interaction with people my age. I don't know that that's true for people who are homeschooled. A lot of the times they have meetings and everything with other homeschooled kids. So, there's that. I don't know if that's believable. Not that I'd have a problem doing so. My dog, who I named Theo, had steadily grown a bond with me over the course of a month. We bonded the way any other kid would with his dog. We went on walks, we played together, bathed together, fed him, and overall, trying to raise him the best I could, as my parents had done for me. Needless to say, my parents were impressed. Their opinion of me soon changed. It was January 1st, the beginning of a new year, and a new beginning for me. I woke up at around 10 a.m., a late start for me. I actually never made it to midnight on New Year's before. I felt like absolute shit. I was greeted in the kitchen by my mother, who provided me a delicious breakfast. My mother's cooking was the stuff of legend. As I sat at the dining room table to eat breakfast, Theo greeted me under the table and sat down at my feet. I slipped him a piece of bacon. He was delighted. The breakfast was cut short. One of my chores was to get the mail every day. As soon as I heard the familiar sound of the mail truck, I shot up out of my chair. One of my animal documentaries taught me about Ivan Pavlov and his dogs. Funny how I didn't know I was being conditioned to react a certain way to the sound of the truck. I was still tired from last night. I fumbled towards the front door. I wasn't paying much attention. As soon as I opened the door, Theo took off as fast as he could. I couldn't process what just happened. I had never done that before. I collected my thoughts and decided to go after him. I grabbed my jacket from the coat rack, and ran outside. As soon as I stepped my foot on the porch, I froze. Theo hadn't gotten far. He hadn't even left the front yard. The yard's exit was blocked by a man. This was the first time I saw him. I really like this. This is very effective. We're getting real scientific details about Ivan Pavlov. We're getting a reason that we can talk about Ivan Pavlov because of these animal documentaries that were already mentioned. The idea that he is being trained just like the dog, which is what Ivan Pavlov was positing in his research. I really like that. And there is a good lead up to this man. All very effective. I like where this is going, or rather I don't, but let's continue on. The man looked straight at me. He didn't blink. I didn't know what to do or how to feel. At first I was grateful. He was the only thing standing between Theo and the rest of the world. He said nothing. Theo was looking up at him. He wagged his tail. He panted. It was as if the man didn't notice the dog was there. He just kept staring. I wanted to say something. I wanted to thank him. The way he was looking at me, as if he was expecting me to say something I couldn't bring myself to. Without averting his gaze, he knelt down and picked up Theo by the scruff of his neck. Theo whined. I wanted to tell him to put my dog down, but again, I couldn't. I simply couldn't think of the appropriate words. My mind was in a jumble. I couldn't move. I couldn't think straight. All I could do was watch. The man reached into his pocket, pulled out a knife, and cut the dog's throat in one quick motion. Blood spilled into the snow-covered ground. He held the dog in the air for a few seconds, letting Theo's blood form a puddle underneath him. The man then simply let go. Theo fell with a light crunch onto the reddened snow. Again, the man's gaze did not leave mine. He dropped the knife on the ground and merely walked away. It wasn't until he was completely out of sight that I could move again. I made my way over to Theo's garbling corpse, and I stood over him. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't shed a single tear. Very powerful stuff that we have here. The idea that our owner of Theo is just so either stunned by this action, by this man, something supernatural about him is just preventing him from feeling these emotions, from shedding tears. He's just kind of emotionally stunted, or it could just be that he's emotionally stunted independent of all of that. That is a very dramatic thing. But all of this is completely possible. There are crazy people in the world who would do this kind of thing. It's not at all a realistic story, and this is the kind of thing that really would traumatize a child. And Creepypasta should be about real-world figures, even when you're implanting bullshit and nonsense into the story. It should ultimately always come back to the real horrors of life. And these are the real kind of horrors of life. Having a dog murdered in front of you, that is incredibly horrific and real. Unlike, say, boogeyman kind of thing. Okay. My mother emerged from the house, surely wondering why getting the mail was taking so long. I don't blame her for screaming. She saw me standing over the mangled corpse of Theo, knife on the ground. It didn't take a genius to put two and two together. The scene described itself. Ooh, so it looks like we're going to be blamed. Our narrator's going to be blamed for killing Theo. Interesting. Aftermath of the first occurrence, we have another header. This is formatted really strange anyway. In the following months, my parents had forced me into seeing a psychiatrist. Good, psychiatrist, not psychologist, nice detail. Didn't make that stupid mistake, okay. When asked why I killed Theo, I tried to tell him it wasn't me. I tried my best to tell him about the man. I could tell he wasn't buying it. All right, said the therapist with a smug tone. Tell me what this man looked like. Okay, that's a nice detail, that's where this is coming from. This is where the idea of, this picture coming into focus. Okay, good. That's when I realized I couldn't describe him. It's not that I didn't remember his face, it was just, he was so generic, I couldn't be able to describe him without describing a million other people in the world. His face was so forgettable. I know I stared at the man for a good 5 minutes. One would assume I would be able to remember his face, the face of a man who killed my dog without breaking eye contact with me. It wasn't like I knew what he looked like, but my brain couldn't translate his appearance into words. I didn't answer the therapist's question. I simply slumped into my chair. Wow, narrator here, that sucks ass. And that, again, is real-world horror. A lot of the times, you're not going to be able to describe specific details that's going to lead to catching a specific criminal. This is a very real-world problem. And again, that means the world in a story like this. But let's just finish this up. Throughout my entire life, this man has popped up on multiple occasions. I may go into further details in the future, but all I can say for now is that he definitely exists. I may seem crazy, but I don't know what I saw that day. But I know what I saw that day. I always see him, whether he's among the crowd, while watching the news, or in my dreams. He's real, and he's always watching. So call me a cynic, call me overly critical, because that's what a lot of people like to call me. I think that this story kind of ends and begins on very sour notes. They're not exactly strong points. It kind of wants to take the story in a supernatural direction that it really doesn't need to go. It can just be as simple as, this is a traumatic experience, I can't remember it. The core of the story is working beautifully, and the idea that, I might discuss this later, and then it never gets discussed again. It's very clearly just an isolated story. That's kind of disappointing. Just let it be its isolated story, and it's beautiful as is. I am a fan of the story. I like where it went. I feel like it could be a little tighter as a story, but let me know what you think in the comments below. We do have a sponsor for today, though. Ornate Coffins. Ornate Coffins. It's illegal to fuck the dead, but you can still fuck the grieving.